Now.
All right. Cool. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We wish we could be live, but we have some technical difficulties. So we are going to record this little panel session and post it. Anyone that's watching this, feel free to comment below with any questions. All the panelists today are going to kind of be looking at those questions and helping answer any of them as we go through it. So thank you so much. I am Meredith. This is Adrian, or Adrian and Meredith. We are hosting these industry Zoom panels once a week for now, and as topics come up. We have a great batch of people today. Today's topic is all about releasing and recording during COVID. Should you release, what the PR landscape looks like, what the editorial landscape looks like, and how to be collaborative and potentially make a record, singles, that kind of stuff, while we are all quarantined from each other. So who wants to kick it off with the introductions? I'll have everyone do self-intros. Ian, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Ian Thomson, with manager for Adrian+Meredith and director of talent and partnerships at Milo Music Festival in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Devon.
Yay.
I'll go. I'm Andrew Leahey. I'm an artist and a music journalist. I'm the leader of my own band, Andrew Leahey and the Homestead, and I play with a couple artists, namely Elizabeth Cook.
My name is Danielle. I'm a publicist. My company is Victory Lap Publicity. And it's good to be here.
Devon, you up?
Oh yeah, I can go. I'm Devon from Hearth Music. Hi, I'm a publicist. I run a PR firm out of Seattle called Hearth PR. And yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
And I'm Shafer-Haiss. I am a producer and engineer and songwriter and drummer with a bunch of folks around Nashville. And Adrian+Meredith recorded their upcoming record here at my place. And Andrew has been here as well. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Okay, well, just to kick it off, Adrian and I, we're sitting on a finished record, the one that we did with Aaron. And I know that we have been privy to a lot of conversations, both with Devon and with friends and with Ian and all sorts of people, about the big epic question: should we release our full-length record? We were planning on releasing it this summer. Should we still do it? Should we not do it? Adrian and I personally have also been releasing a lot of backlog stuff to varying degrees of success. That's kind of the big question that I'd like to kind of start with, especially for independent artists out there that aren't with a record label, don't necessarily have a team. What does the landscape look like from the perspective of both PR agents on here and a journalist and an artist? Who wants to kick that off? Loaded question.
I can tell you what I've been doing. So I've been releasing, one track per month. It was a plan that I had in place before everything happened with the pandemic. And it was kind of an idea of, I was going to be busy with Elizabeth Cook. We were going to be touring for most of the year. And so I knew that my band wasn't going to get to play 100, plus gigs a year like we normally do. I wanted to keep up whatever momentum we had generated by our album release last year. And I wanted to maybe kind of circumvent the huge, just, pouring of money, that goes into a proper album campaign where you do hire a publicist and you've got your lawyer on deck and you've got your, a radio programmer and you need to be touring all the time. You're paying the guys in your band. It is great to do that. And it is a really good way to, put an album out there, but just, I didn't have the money or the time, to do it that way this year. And so even with the quarantine going, I'm continuing just to put out one track a month. I'm playing online gigs and I feel like it's good just to, keep my music in the minds of my fans. The return on the investment isn't the same as it would be if I was out, playing gigs and, selling actual product, but, it's been good. It feels like I'm doing something.
Yeah. Do you still plan to package, vinyl or something like that? And are you still planning on doing that and hitting up,
Physical
distribution in any way?
Absolutely. And that was always my plan too. I checked with my distro company before I kind of, pulled the trigger on this plan. Once all, the tracks are out on the DSPs, I'll package everything together as an actual album. But it was always kind of my plan just to like lead the way one track at a time and almost like spoon feed it, an album to an audience like that's grown unable to process an entire album at one point for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Can I ask you real quick, like, if you felt like more or less than 50% of your album sales were due to live touring in the past?
That's like 80% probably.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Same with us. By the way. That's the same. I wanted to just replicate that's kind of the case for a lot of grassroots and I hate the term, but up and coming artists. That is kind of where Americana has seen a lot of album sales. So that is probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the biggest concern, right, of putting out a record is the lack of touring and the lack of album sales from touring.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a concern. And I don't really know what the answer to that is. I've only put out one track so far. I've got like another one coming out next week. So I don't feel like, if the quarantine went for another year, I think I'd feel a little bit more hesitation about just kind of, getting my entire album out there and not being able to actually go on the road and, and have my merch help me pay my mortgage.
Yeah. And just kind of as a segue too, but did you end up hiring any sort of PR with this, or have you been doing some of your own PR, and how has that side of it been going?
I mean, I've been doing my own, and I'm lucky in that, my other job is working as a music journalist. And so I've got a lot of connections that I think most musicians wouldn't have. And clearly your traditional album campaign, PR campaign would be like a 3-month PR campaign at whatever amount of money per month. And then if you're going to extend and have a PR campaign for my kind of project, which would be like a track at a time spread out over a year, it would probably be like a lower PR rate, like extended all year long. But currently, with the last track I put out, like I had enough connections to get a premiere, on my own with that one. And the track that comes out next, week, I'm kind of like using up all my connections. I got a premiere for that one as well. Right. And again, if the quarantine extends, if we get to August or November and we're in this thing still, I'm going to be tapped out and I'm going to need to do something. But I've been able to be pretty DIY about it so far.
That's great. Okay. So kind of with that, releasing is one thing, and we've been getting, one side of the coin of advice, especially when it comes to any sort of digital release, is do it and do it often. Content. People are absorbing it left and right. Everyone's sitting at home. The world needs hope, and music and art, just get it out. That's fine for some stuff, but with more of a traditional campaign along kind of your version of it, or what we would want to do for a full-length studio record, that does come with wanting the press and wanting to hire PR. So, one question that I kind of want to pass off to Danielle and Devon is, let's say we go for a big PR campaign. What patterns are you seeing right now? Are publications still writing? Are journalists being furloughed? What's going on in that realm?
Yeah, Danielle, do you want to start, or should I?
Sure. Well, we've definitely, you and I, Devon, have been like directly communicating about this. This is an ongoing conversation that we're having. There are a lot of changes in regard to staffing and furloughs and making cutbacks with a lot of different publications. And there's also a lot of changes in relation to the angles that people are covering right now. Obviously, the media is hugely infiltrated with coronavirus related stories. And so it's been a little bit tricky navigating how to approach asking for coverage that is not directly pertaining to that, or doesn't even have really a tie to it. But on the other hand, we're getting a lot of feedback from people that we're pitching for music coverage that are saying, yeah, the world, same sentiments as Meredith was saying, like the world needs music and I still want to cover things. But what I'm noticing is that there's still a little bit of a pivot there in terms of how those stories are crafted and having some sort of tie-in with the current climate of the world. So it might be more stories of, Andrew sharing his new track, but also, crafting his own quarantine playlist, sharing the things that he's listening to and talking about what life is like for him, as opposed to just, this is my new music.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with what Danielle said. I mean, I think we're seeing that a lot of publications are drastically cutting back their music coverage. A lot of major publications we're tracking. I mean, NPR, seems like Rolling Stone Country is cutting back a bit. Billboard's cutting back. Some of that is just because they're trying to kind of adapt to where things are now and trying to adapt to writing more about coronavirus stuff. And some of it is just straight layoffs. So there's just been a lot of layoffs across the board for media. So yeah, for sure, one of the big pivots is looking at like how to talk about how the artist is coping in quarantine. We just booked a NPR Daily Breather for Teddy Thomson because he had this really beautiful story about how he was creating on-demand video for people like who were elderly or healthcare workers that couldn't be on social media, just to help lift their spirits. It was really sweet. It was a really nice story, and it made for a really great pitch. So we're definitely asking all of our clients now, like, what are you doing right now during quarantine that we could be talking about? And then a lot of the pivot too is towards obviously live streaming and pitching that as a publicist. In general, the landscape of publicity is that press publicity is still going as long as albums are coming out, and it's still pretty functional with, it's just a lot of pivoting on our end as press publicists. But tour publicity seems to be pretty much, at the moment, tour publicity is pretty much impossible. Obviously, nobody's touring. You can kind of pivot, and we're seeing people pivot to basically go after, or to talk to journalists who we would call like regional journalists, and just talk about, if the band's from a city, they still want to write about bands in that city, or they still want to write about live streams in the city. So journalists who write for regional outlets still want to write. The really scary thing we're seeing is the collapse of all the alt weeklies.
Yes.
And that's kind of happening right now. We're seeing a lot of alt weeklies go under just because of layoffs and no advertising money. So we predict that even when things get back to normal, that even with tour publicity, it's going to be pretty hard to impossible to bring much in, because so many of those alt weeklies would have collapsed in the meantime. And then finally, sorry to take up so much time, but finally, the last thing is radio publicity. Radio publicity is getting paused a lot right now because a lot of the radio stations are under lockdown or under quarantine, and people aren't able to go in. Some of the bigger stations have figured it out. Some stations are open with just one DJ in the booth or whatever. And then some stations have figured out, like KEXP, I think, has pretty much figured out how to do it all from home. So the DJs work from home. But we're seeing kind of radio publicity kind of going in fits and starts right now. It seems to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, Devon, you and I, and Meredith and I, we all talked last week about, it's mostly bad news, but there are some outlets that are actually going up, and that's the streaming game, as you mentioned last week, compared to the traditional publicity model. And direct to fan access is definitely more is going up in this time frame. Do you? We talked about this in the last week's panel as well. Do you feel like there's any place for publicity in the direct to fan model of streaming, in the way that, and not to quote last week's panel, but a Fleming artist booking agency have kind of, for lack of a better term, inserted themselves into the streaming world of being a middleman between particular hosts and particular house concerts and particular streaming sources and the artists themselves, verifying that certain audio is up to quality, video is up to quality, you get X amount of songs out of your stream, that kind of qualifying data that they have as a booking agency. Do you feel like there's any particular publicity companies that can find themselves interested in the new model of streaming?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer, but it'd be good to get an artist perspective as well. But I
Sure.
mean, yeah, for sure, we're looking at that. I've already started booking live streams for our artists, which I don't really feel honestly very comfortable doing. It kind of feels like, I guess that's technically something that the booking agent or the manager should be doing. But I mean, there's no money really anywhere right now, so what's the point of arguing over it? It's just better to try and get something done. So I've been booking live streams for our clients, and we're moving as fast as we can to build that out. And then we're also doing more work pitching live streams to journalists. We built a separate PR list that's all of the journalists who are currently covering live streams and all the online forms you got to fill out for the different publications. So we're tracking all that and moving on that. I feel kind of weird, I guess I would feel kind of weird just like doing only that with an artist and charging them to do that. It's kind of just more like we're trying to fill in the gaps that we can't do anymore with normal press publicity. So we're just trying to be helpful to our artists.
Yeah.
But certainly obviously where we're going right now for the rest of this year is going to be a digital model for music. So that everyone's going to be moving on that. And very soon, we've already started seeing, I just got an email from Gold Star. You guys know Gold Star?
No.
Gold Star, Gold Star is weird. It's like a service that sells half-price tickets. I used to use it sometimes when I produce shows, but it was like, say you have a show that's like not really selling super well, you can go to Gold Star and they'll put out this big blast that tickets are half off, and then you sell a bunch more tickets and at least get the place packed.
Sure.
So Gold Star just pivoted and now they're selling live streams. So there's like a whole list they sent me of like comedy, theater, music, what have you. So people are going to monetize the live stream real fast. It's already happening. It's going to happen a lot more quickly. And I don't know it might be a little weird. Like it's already kind of weird how many live streams there are. It's just like a flood. So when we start seeing this flood turn into a money flood, and then I just read that Live Nation's moving on monetizing live streams as well as one of their main things. So it's going to look kind of weird within a month, I think.
Yeah. Aaron, you've been pretty quiet so far, and I feel like the last 4 conversations that we've all had really pertain to what you and Jamie Kent put together a few weeks ago. Jamie Kent was a panelist from last week's panel, and he spoke to it. But, talking about several different things that we've already mentioned, having content that is COVID-19 related and sign of the times. Also streaming-based shows and all the likes of what we've just spoke of. If you want to speak to what you and Jamie put together, and I don't even remember what it was called, but go right ahead.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Jamie Kent and myself, the day they canceled South by Southwest, I was on the road with my wife, Michaela Ann, and we were, I don't know, somewhere, Salt Lake City or something, and heard they were canceling South by. And Jamie has a riverboat cruise that he puts on there every year. It's really successful. The boat sells out pretty quick. There's an afternoon show and an evening show. And I was just thinking about him, thinking about that falling through, and kind of seeing the writing on the wall. There's going to be a lot of things falling through. I called him and I'm like, man, I wonder if there's something that we can do to support these bands that are going to be losing all these shows. And in the course of 2 weeks, we organized a online telethon, kind of like a throwback Jerry Lewis thing, as a fundraiser for Music Cares. Again, Andrew was part of that. We had 50 from Roseanne Cash and Kev Mo and John Oates to Shovels and Rope and whole slew of folks. And it was made 100% in quarantine, in isolation. We had Curtis Wayne Millard produce it, direct it, and put all the video together. And so really took our time trying to bump up the quality of the live stream. We had video overlays, we had intros and outros and all of that. And the original intent was to broadcast it live from home studios here in Nashville, which is a building in downtown East Nashville. But as quarantine set in even harder, we realized it wasn't really possible to have the video crew there to be able to have live hosts and everything. So we produced it ahead of time, kind of in the same way they produce late night TV. So it was a live feel and all of that. And we aired it across multiple platforms. It ended up pulling in about 250,000 viewers the night of the show, and raised about $18,000 for Music Cares. It was, yeah, it's a pretty amazing experience.
Do you feel like you connected with people specifically on the content of what you guys were talking about, the telethon's content, or do you feel like it was kind of a combination of that and starvation of material out there on the internet? Do you feel like it was star power? Do you feel like you got specific feedback as to what people gravitated towards?
Yeah, it was definitely content and the feel. The show that Curtis put together, the vibe, it was, you know, totally kind of throwback 80s vibe meets like, you know, the Wayne's World public access kind of thing. We had comedy skits, we had poetry readings to kind of break up the monotony of just music.
Cool.
And so it was that kind of just comforting kind of campy feel that people really responded to.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about kind of, you know, what things look like right now. And it's been an intense 2 months. And I think at first, obviously there was like this mad dash to live streams and everything and releasing. Now things are settling in, and I think we're starting to see what the long-term looks like. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit more too. Obviously there, you know, I guess, and again, if both artists and kind of publicists on here can speak to this, if people are delaying their releases, kind of what is that bottleneck going to look like? And how can we start to look at these patterns for the next 2 years? I mean, or even just the next year. Live touring might not be a thing for a little bit, you know, might be limited capacity. We just don't know what that's going to look like. If you're an artist trying to think through when to release, how to release, and how to start preparing for that, you know, as artists in this industry in general, we always are thinking 3, 6 months, 12 months out.
3.
Yeah.
One.
But what are some internal conversations that are happening within your teams, within your own head?
Well, there's been the obvious sort of point of everybody understanding that there's going to be an oversaturation of releases with the artists that choose to postpone their releases.
Yeah.
And so with that comes making a very intentional decision of, if I first of all, why am I postponing my release? If the goal is to space things out so that I know I have a little bit more time to sort of garner awareness and buzz and press, do I also know that it's probably going to be even harder to get the attention of these tastemakers in that time down the line? And so it'll be a very interesting sort of gradual rollout, I think, in terms of like, I think we'll see a lot. I mean, I'm noticing honestly more people deciding to move their release dates up versus push them back, interestingly enough. And I think that the reason for that is because a lot of people are sort of just throwing all rules out the window, which at this point I think is really smart, because it kind of gives people the opportunity to sort of take matters into their own hands and to say, you know, like Adrian was saying, you know, direct to fan, using that sort of direct to fan model to your advantage and saying, you know, let's try and create a relationship with my listeners without the gatekeepers.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and not to interject, but I mean, I've got that exact same experience as an independent artist who employs, you know, multiple, you know, subcontractors, I guess, within my business. You know, I've put out 2 albums intended to be like released on a mainstream level, you know, but I'm independent. And so I'm using this framework and this, you know, checklist of like a major label mainstream release, but I'm an indie artist, and it's just so expensive. It's enormously, you know, expensive. And I feel like, you know, whenever I talk to a label, like they always ask me all these questions that like don't really make sense for an independent artist like to worry about, but like they want me to have all these like things, you know, like all boxed up and together, because like that's how like the major label industry operates. So honestly, I mean, I've been really you know, I'm relieved and happy just to like put out music free of those industry constraints. You know, yeah, I'm not, you know, I don't get to sell albums at concerts because we don't have concerts right now. But I think the interaction with my audience is a lot stronger. It's a much more, you know, warm audience, and you can make use of, you know, like boosted ads on Facebook. You can make use of live streams. I'm doing this like thing where a person, you know, chooses any tune they want in my catalog, and I'm making like a vinyl of that specific tune, like for each person. Like there's all kinds of like income streams that you can come up with. And, you know, kind of given what I've, you know, I've been doing lately, like the audience is warmer and more, you know, more apt kind of to go along that river with me.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're thinking about too, like where you are in your career and where you think that next album is going to take you, what the next step is going to be after this, if where that is, you know, you know, obviously each intention with a release is to go just, you know, a few steps higher and sort of have that breakout. And what happened with, you know, Rainbow Kitten Surprise, like they started with a lot of really, really grassroots, like internet based relationships. And by the time they had their breakout album and went on tour, it was a sold out tour. So I think looking back at other, you know, artists that have that same model and were really successful with it, obviously like the two goals are, one, to sell the album because you want to, you know, be able to make revenue off of your art, but the other goal is of course to expand your fan base. And that's, I think, where more people are going to be focusing their efforts right now, which I think in turn will make things more lucrative.
Well, and I'll say too, just one last point, like I think like there is a happy medium as well. So I've been talking about how I'm putting out one track at a time. You know, I'm saving like, you know, what I view as like my big songs for a release, hopefully in a healthier, non-pandemic time. You know, I want to continue having music on the radio if I can. And so, you know, I am like talking a big game about how great it is, like, you know, like putting out, you know, like a track by track on the DSPs, but I'm putting out what would be the equivalent of like, you know, track number 8 and 9 on an album. Yeah.
Devon, what were you going to say?
Yeah, well, I just think, I mean, I agree with everything that Andrew and Danielle are saying. I think that like the industry's never been super great for independent artists. So if the industry is collapsing, really the best thing for independent artists is just to go to their fan base. That's different from the industry. That's a fan base that supports you. I mean, sure, the industry can help you build the fan base, but really no one can help you build the fan base better than you can yourself as an artist. So my recommendation for artists really is always to lean on the fans and to talk to the fans, you know, and see what people are looking for. And yeah, Andrew's right. I mean, release an album or release singles at a time is a great idea. And you can kind of look at your own way of looking, what is going to work for my career and what I feel like doing, what stimulates me creatively, and then go with that and just build the model on that. I mean, no matter what, when we come back from this, we're all going to have to rebuild the model from scratch anyways. And it's going to look totally different. So what's the point in like doubling down on old industry models right now when it's already collapsing? The one thing I will say that's kind of tricky is that, and this is what we're trying to gauge, is that we don't have a guarantee that when we come back, there's going to be a lot left. That's kind of the real sad part of what's happening, is that a lot of the things we're kind of leaning on are maybe not going to come back. You know, we might not have as many radio stations. We might not have we definitely won't have as many press publications. You know, we're not going to have that many alt weeklies. They're not going to even have that many music venues. I mean, that's something that nobody's really talking about, is that a lot of these music venues are going to probably permanently close within the next couple months. Like, we're doing a lot of pro bono work in Washington State, there's a coalition of independent venue owners and managers, and they're all trying to kind of lobby because they have astronomical rents and absolutely no way to pay the rents, and they're basically on the verge of closing. So, I mean, we kind of need to look ahead to the industry not being very functional in 2021. The thing that's hard that I'm trying to understand is maybe it's better to put the album out now before it starts to collapse more. That's what I haven't quite figured out, is like,
Right.
you know, albums that came out in March were able to get better press than albums that are coming out now, because that was right before some key places started to change their policies and cut back on their writing. So, I mean, if you want to kind of follow the industry model, and if you don't have a lot of strong stories about what's going on with you in quarantine right now, probably now is a pretty good time to get it out, just to get it moving. If you want to kind of do it your own way and build your own world for this and make your own models, then do it the way you want and take some time with it and really interface with your fans. There's not really any easy answers. I'm trying to understand it myself. But it does also seem that a lot of people are bumping to fall, and that's definitely going to cause a backlog in fall. Everyone's bumping to fall because they want to tour in fall, but
Right.
I don't know if we're going to be touring in the fall.
Right.
Right.
That's the old industry model, the touring to support it.
Waiting for the tour. I think one thing that, you know, keeps resonating with me as we're all discussing is right now seems like a great time to interact with the fans that you already have. What have you all seen in terms of building new fans during this time? I mean, there's so many ways that we do it. And Devon, you mentioned it too. You know, the industry is really good at helping you reach new fans. But honestly, the most grassroots way that as musicians, we've always been able to access new fan bases is by doing shows with other artists, right? Where some people come for one artist, other people come for you, and you swap your fan base and you walk out with, you know, 20 new likes on Facebook, and we kind of make fans out of each other's fans. What kind of, you know, collaborative things are you seeing? Andrew, have you been able to do anything? Obviously, Aaron, the doing things like, you know, the telethon and that kind of stuff is a great way. Do we see more of that kind of stuff happening? Ways that artists feel like they can start building, you know, buzz and building a fan base to then kind of before they release something new.
So I'll jump in, Andrew.
Yeah, please.
Just from my end, and kind of piggybacking on what Devon was saying about kind of throwing a rule book out and trying new stuff. And it kind of stems from running the telethon. One thing people really like is like they're watching John Oates sing in his living room. Granted, it's like a $8 million living room that none of us can afford, but he's still like in his living room. You know, and there was some B-roll footage of, you know, I would assume his wife walking and filming, and all of a sudden it's like, you see he's singing into an iPhone that's on top of a stepladder sitting on a bunch of books, and it's like, oh man, John Oates is in the same situation as I am.
Yeah.
And so kind of coming from that, I've seen a lot of people and have been asked to produce a lot of things, a lot of covers, like people doing like left of center covers, like, oh man, I'm gonna do this Travis Tritt song, or oh man, I'm gonna revive this, like, you know, Shania Twain song from 1997, like something that's like a little out of the norm from what your fans would normally expect from you.
Be more creative, getting more creative.
Getting more creative, but I think it also like hits this subliminal feeling that everybody's like, man, the world is totally different. Like my life is totally different every day, and like so hearing an artist come out with something new, is something different, trying something else is like, A, as an artist, I think that's really cool. Stretch your mind, stretch your creativity, try something new, because why not? And then B, you know, it's kind of, you know, in a sense, it's like, man, maybe some of Travis Tritt's fans will hear your song, and all of a sudden you got like a bunch of Tritt fans as your fans. And
Aaron, I'm going to double down, not to interrupt. I'm going to double down, but the reason that I wanted you to come on this particular panel too is because you're closer to the creative side than the release side, and you for years have been doing drum tracks in that basement behind you, where people will just send you tracks and recordings, and you'll add drums to people's recordings just over the internet, so you don't even have to be in person.
Yeah, exactly. I'm working on a song for somebody in Taiwan right now, and I just finished one for a pop artist in China. Yeah, I've done drum tracks right here for about 5 years or so, and I also produce full songs. I'm working on a record with somebody in Philadelphia that I've honestly never met in my life. We've been working on it for about a year. It's really fun. Sometimes he'll send me voice memos and I'll build a track around that. Other times I'll build a track and he'll write to that. And so for me, having done that here a lot, it's nice kind of to have everybody off the road and at home, because all of a sudden all these new people that want to create.
Yeah.
You know, I'm writing a song with somebody in Minneapolis right now. My world, my geography is actually expanded because of this, because there's more people that are home, there's more people with time. That's a really,
Yeah.
And more people that maybe hadn't considered, you know, kind of doing fly track version of building a song or a record in the past are now, I mean, it is the option, really the only option. And so I'm sure that has sort of opened up a lot of people's minds into thinking, oh, well, can't I just record this and then send it there and then send it there? And it works. It's been working for you for a long time. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of people out there that are taking this time creatively. As much as releasing feels uncertain, I know a lot of people are writing, a lot of people are recording. And you've obviously seen an influx.
I have
Requests.
Yeah. Everything from drum tracks to producing to mixing. Seen a lot of people kind of reach out and all of that, and to, you know, anybody that's watching this that's like, oh man, that's interesting, I would just say you'd be surprised at who is able to record at their house.
Well, that's really interesting. Sorry, not to interrupt. That's really interesting what Devon was saying earlier too, because you already have so many people sitting on records from this year, and they're going to condense it into the fall. And now you're telling me that there's also more people recording over the internet than before. So like, I almost feel like the backlog is just going to get bigger and bigger, not smaller and smaller. Is that a fair assumption, you think? Or is it just that maybe people are recording differently, and maybe not more or less, but just maybe differently?
Yeah, maybe it's differently. I don't know. For me, on my end, it feels really fertile, really creatively fertile right now. And there's a lot of people just, you know, with things to express, with time to express that, with boredom. I don't know what it is, but it seems really fertile right now. As far as releases, it's been, I've worked with some people that are like, man, I'm putting together a record, because Bandcamp has announced, you know, like once a month they're going to waive their fees. So I've worked with some people that are like, man, I'm putting a record together specifically for that. Like, I'm going to release it just on that day and take it off. And another world I work in a lot is the sync world. So
I was going to ask. Yeah.
Writing with a lot of people and producing a lot of stuff, pitch for sync. That hasn't slowed down at the moment. I would assume that it will, because actors can't be together right now.
I'm wondering about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Devon was talking about radio earlier. How does that fall into TV too? And
yeah, but that's, for instance, I think it is on Monday or Tuesday, I just had a song that I wrote and produced with Shelley Fairchild on a show called Raw as well, which is on the CW network. And it aired on Tuesday, and she released the single on Spotify in conjunction with that.
Right.
And then,
I mean, we've definitely talked. I mean, Andrew, you said it too. It's like there are ways during this time to get creative and try to limit costs of a release. But the flip side of that is it still costs money to make a record. It still costs money to send fly tracks around and hire people to record and do that. And you're still looking at mixing, you're still looking at mastering. Even if you never go to physical, there's still quite a bit of costs that would be involved. So when we start looking at the monetization of music right now, and I know it's all super skewed, but it is worth a conversation. As we're releasing on these digital platforms, have any of you noticed a strategy kind of in this new wave of, do you go to Spotify right away, or do you release on Bandcamp first and try to see an influx in downloads versus streams? What kind of strategy is behind all of that? Sync licensing was a huge thing I was going to ask you about. And is it still going? Do we think it's going to slow down? Sounds like you're predicting that it might take a little bit longer, but that will start to slow down. Kind of open-ended question, but.
I mean, I can jump in. I'm basically using my live streams as a launch pad for everything else I'm doing. So You know, when I'm putting out new songs on Spotify, I use my live stream like to help get the word out. I used my live stream yesterday. I like held up a t-shirt. You know, my wife is coming back after, you know, having like been in school in like another town for a couple of years. And so I've just had all of these like boxes of, you know, like merchandise like in our laundry room and in our bedroom, and I've got to get those out. So I need to like move merchandise. And so yesterday on my live stream, you know, I mentioned that and I like held up a shirt and I sold like 10 of them. So like that's, you know, I'm using that, you know, like these, you know, gigs with like no overhead, you know, costs, you know, like I don't need to, you know, like pay for gasoline, like to drive, you know, to a gig. It's like basically free, and it's a really good launching pad if you use it as such.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're just seeing the good news is that like there's always been a lot of talk about supporting artists directly. There's a lot of conversations that have already been happening about how Spotify and streaming doesn't really pay the bills. So the benefit of that is that people are more ready than ever to support artists, and they know that artists are struggling right now. So I think for any artist that's, you know, I think you definitely need to just be releasing something, putting something out that your audience can, not in a way of like trying to capitalize on the situation, but just because people want to help you. People want to help artists. I've been spending more money on Bandcamp than I ever spent before. I've been spending tons of money on merch. You know, it's like, you know, nice to be able to try and help someone. And we all know everyone's in trouble right now and everyone's struggling. So I think you just need to think of ways to give your audience methods to give your audience stuff to buy, stuff to support you with, you know, and especially with Bandcamp, every month moving forward, Bandcamp is going to waive the fees for one of those days of the month. I forget which day it was. I'm blanking right now, but whatever. They're going to waive the fees that day. And that's huge. I mean, that's been, what was it, like $7 million came in last time, $4 million the first time. You know, so Adrian+Meredith, you guys dropped an album. Did you drop your live album to coincide with the Bandcamp thing?
Yep, we did a live record this last Friday.
Yep, and we timed it with the Bandcamp thing, and it was great. I mean, it feels, you know, without putting a ton of PR into it, again, like we didn't really reach out to any publications or anything, but we have our mailing list. We reached our fans. We did, you know, Facebook advertisements, and we've been doing live shows, live streams to be promoting it. You know, I will say it feels successful when it happens. I'm feeling like the buzz of it is running shorter.
Yes, I will agree with that. And Devon, you and I spoke about that last week too, is, you know, there is so much empathy in the world, and empathy might be starting to thin out over the last couple of years. And I do wonder, you know, Jason Isbell put out a record today. How is that release and that release tail going to compare to Southeastern, you know, when we were still in a record release? My guess is, and what Meredith was saying, is that it is going to be a shorter release campaign. Fiona Apple put out potentially the record of the year a couple of weeks ago. And my guess is that if it was a couple of years ago, we'd probably still be talking about it being the record of the decade. But right now we're talking about COVID, and right now we're talking about politics, and I feel like it's hard to pull people away from those messages. Is that fair to assume?
Yeah, I think it's fair, but I think that the message that we need to immediately support artists is stronger than it ever has been or ever will be. So perhaps some of that is balanced out. I mean, yeah, obviously the news cycle is going to be berserk as long as Trump is in power, because he engenders chaos, and as long as COVID is happening because it's all anyone's thinking about.
Right.
Yeah, but you know, on the other hand, people know that artists need help. So I mean, yeah, maybe be cautious about releasing your magnum opus right now, unless you've really given it the time to prep it, you know, but definitely don't be cautious about putting up a new t-shirt, you know, or a new tote bag, or putting up something cool that you're doing, you know, some way to connect with your fans and give them a way to support you. I mean, I think in general, just people are really looking for ways to help artists right now.
I agree. I definitely feel that. Yeah, Ian.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if I'm an artist right now that's taking this time and using it to write and then record new material, what does it is it wise to revisit back catalog? You know, if we're talking about people wanting to help artists and monetize a little bit, if all I have is an album from 2 years ago or 3 years ago, how can you speak? Is that value added to then revisit that and then put a campaign around that as well?
Maybe.
I
think.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I really, really appreciate when artists that I already am a fan of give me an inside look into things that they were sitting on. I just personally, because if I like you already, I want more content. I don't really care what the format is, whether it's literally just debuting a new song that you wrote that's maybe not even finished yet on your Facebook live stream, or it's, hey, this is, you know, my very first EP that I stripped off of all streaming platforms when I came out with my, you know, debut album, and no one, you know, that knows me now in this era of my career knows that this exists. It's, I mean, it's fun for me, like, to consume that kind of content. So I think other people will probably share that same sentiment.
You're talking about like the Beatles box set? Are you talking about the re-release of the Beatles box set?
I'm talking about, you know, like the Aaron Lee Tasjans of the world that, you know, just will sit in front of the, you know, his piano at home and be like, this is a song that I wrote 5 years ago and I never quite found a home for it on any of my records. Here you go, you know?
Yeah. You know, another thing I wanted to say real quick was that I just got super excited. This artist, I think Sam Sweeney is his name. He did a whole listening party with his new album where he just like played the album and he kind of listened along on headphones and then chatted about tracks and said it was playing and talked about his favorite chords and showed off the music sheets. And that was like super fun. I didn't even know the guy. I didn't even know his music. It just popped up on Facebook and I was like super into it. So there's all kinds of cool ideas, you know, certainly with your back catalog, like that's kind of a fun idea. Put up one of your albums and just talk about all the stories behind it, you know, and do a live listening party.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just the name of the game is keeping your audience, you know, warm and engaged. Like a couple years ago, I had a big health scare and I took a lot of time off, like, you know, probably a year and change. And what I found was, you know, when I came back, I had to go and like pay all the dues I thought I had already paid, because I don't think you're, you know, it's not a cruel thing, but your audience has a hard time waiting around for you because like there's a lot of other music happening, like a lot of other noise is being made. So anything you can do to bring people in and kind of, you know, kind of like what Aaron mentioned, you know, like the camera pulling back and you notice, you know, like John Oates is playing into like an iPhone on his, you know, like a bookshelf or whatever. You know, I feel like your audience wants to know you as an artist. You know, it's like not just about what kind of music you make. It's about like who you are and what your life is like and, you know, what your cat's like names are and, you know, using live streams or kind of like what like Danielle mentioned too, just, you know, like making a clip of you playing like a demo of a song on a piano, anything, even if it's not 100% finessed and polished, if it keeps your audience engaged, I think like that's the name of the game right now.
I had a really interesting thought yesterday while watching Colbert at home and realizing that Colbert and Meredith and I all have the same jokes while we live stream. We're literally telling word for word the same jokes. It's just weird. Like we've literally flattened the entire ecosystem to the fact that Meredith and I have the same platform now as Radiohead to engage our fans. We're all using the same website.
Right.
That's true. And everyone is having the exact same tech problems too. And that's good. I mean, it, you know, not that I want to like feel good at like anybody's expense, but if I'm watching like a live stream and their acoustic guitar is having that washy problem that like mine occasionally will do, which I think could be a RAM problem in my computer. I don't know. Just, it makes me feel better because we're all in the same boat. We're all working out how the hell it works. And how to present it in the best way possible. And I feel like it's going to get better across like the board as long as we're in this season that we're in.
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of start having some closing sentiments from each of you. One that I'm having is just that, you know, in these uncertain times when all the rules have been kind of thrown out the window, there is an opportunity there for artists to be more creative than ever. Knowing that risk is there's like this beautiful cushion of support for risk taking right now in any sort of creative endeavor, because I think audiences know, I think the industry knows, I think other artists knows, anyone who's watching and participating knows that we're all starting off on a whole new adventure here. And we're all trying this for the first time, and we're all sort of figuring it out as we go. And so there's that layer of forgiveness of it maybe not being perfectly finessed right away, but there's encouragement for just trying and doing it. And I think that creativity is being really rewarded right now in a great way. You know, where does that leave things that were planned for a traditional model of release? Well, it might take a minute for I know for Adrian and I, it's going to take us a minute to wrap our brain around, you know, how to change our expectations about what a release might look like and what a release cycle might look like. And that's going to take some time, and we're going to let ourselves do it. But certainly hearing from each of you today has kind of given, I don't know, me a lot to think about.
A lot of perspective for sure.
So do you guys want to go around and kind of tell us how you think the world's going to be?
Andrew, you wanna go? You wanna start?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you know, I just mentioned how a couple years ago I got really, really sick. And I remember like during that time, like not being able to go out and do everything I wanted to do, whether it was just, you know, go to a coffee shop and, you know, like hang with, you know, Adrian and Meredith, or go on tour again for like months at a time like I used to. It made me have a renewed perspective and a renewed appreciation when I, you know, was healthy and was recovered and got to go and like do those like things again. So I feel like we're in store for just like a surge of love for what we do once it goes back to a level that, you know, kind of looks like what it used to look like. And I also feel like, you know, you mentioned this, you know, Meredith, like you know, like everything is going to change about like the music industry landscape. It's kind of going to put indie artists and major label artists on more of an even keel. And I think like that, I mean, like it's healthy. Like for me as an independent artist, I'm glad I'm not on a label. I've been on labels in the past, but I know that if I was on one now, I would have to get clearance for any live stream I wanted to do, or I would have to like, you know, like if I made like a video of a new song and it wasn't perfect and it was only like a verse and a chorus, I would have to like run it by somebody and get an allowance like to go and do it. I'm glad I don't have to do that. I'm glad I get to be nimble. That's one of the many silver linings of a dark situation.
Yeah. Devon, do you want to go next?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just say that, I mean, on the negative side, I would say we should expect this to go on for a long time, that we should expect that it's not going to change, that we're going to lose a lot of the festivals, we're going to lose a lot of the infrastructure we had, and that when we come back, hopefully in 2021, probably mid to late 2021, we're going to be looking at a really different world. But on the positive news, I think that it's going to go a lot more grassroots. So I think that if you start on the grassroots right now and you build your networks, what you guys are doing, bringing people together to talk. Danielle's been doing a really nice thing, bringing some publicists together to share. I'm really trying to share more and talk more and communicate with people more, just to kind of build up a network that can support me. So if I get in trouble, I can reach out to a friend and have them help me. And I think that, you know, rather than seeing flood after flood of artists just doing a live stream, you know, their own live streams whenever they feel like it, like start reaching out and build something with other artists, build something creative that can sustain you. Because I think we're in this for the long haul. And I think we're going to be okay if we lean on each other.
Thank you for very perfectly explaining what we're trying to do today.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers. Aaron or Danielle or?
Hi, Aaron.
Closing thoughts?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I'm going to kind of echo what Meredith said. I mean, you said it beautifully. You know, coming from the creative side, like just create, like just try something new. Now's the time. Like there is a safety net under there. You know, if you do what you've done, you're gonna get what you've already gotten. So just try something new. Like what's the worst that's gonna happen? You're not gonna have any tour dates. You're gonna be stuck at your house. I mean, that's what's going on right now. So just try something new, and see what happens. And then next week, try something else that's new. And you know, it might work this month, it might not work next month, but there's no harm in trying. And you know, again, being somebody that does a lot of recording remotely, like, you know, if you have a microphone and some songs, like sing, and then, you know, read the liner notes on your favorite records and reach out to some people that you like the way they play. Like, you'll be surprised at who has the ability to record at their house, and you can get your favorite musicians on your record. This doesn't hurt. You know, we're all in the same position. We're all here. If you want Johnny Greenwood on your record, cool. And if he says yes, send him my way after.
Danielle.
I am so inspired by all of the innovative ventures that I'm seeing my community take. And so what I would say is just, you know your audience better than, you know, anybody else does, but you also know yourself as an artist better than anybody else does. And so with the notion of, you know, experimenting and sort of just taking that leap with whatever crazy kooky thing comes out of your brain, you know, you're also allowed to sort of take a step back and, you know, hold whatever you want to, you know, a little bit closer to your chest. There might be some artists that are doing things like, you know, putting out tutorials of how to play their songs, you know, or doing super like deep dive, like analytical, like let me talk about and break down every single track and where I was at in my headspace then, and, you know, doing really intimate interviews. And, you know, maybe that's not for you. So just find the thing with your release, you know, find the approach that feels the most aligned for you, and that's going to be the thing that kind of will see the most success, because it's authentic and it feels right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, with no rules on the table anymore, I think it is an opportunity for you know, to go back and cherish authenticity more than ever before. So
Ian,
did you have any
some final thoughts?
Oh, you're muted.
Your audio's off.
I always have thoughts. Yeah, I think, as you know, though being physically distanced the last 2+ months, I've never felt more socially connected than I've ever have in these months. You know, talking to many different people almost every day, and then having panels like this to be a part of as part of a creative community. It really makes me optimistic and positive for a better and brighter future. That, like we've all said, and I agree with all of you, that, you know, there's going to be some really cool things coming out of this. And even though that we might lose some things, I think that we're at a point in our human history to really make things our way, right? To make it positive and have positive change. And I think, you know, I'm excited for that as we come out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and really that starts with conversations like this. So we really appreciate each of you jumping on. We wish we could have been live streamed, but adaptability, it wasn't in the cards today, but this video will be posted. I will tag each of you in it. Keep up with the thread.
Keep up with each other.
Keep up with each
Hopefully,
other. Yeah.
Hopefully you guys stay in touch.
I'm hopeful that a lot of people will go back and listen to this. There's tons of great things to think about and a huge conversation to be continued. I think as an industry and as a community, really, which is really how this industry started, was community. If we can go back to that and just hold on to that on a community aspect level, I think that we will rebuild, and we will find the new model, and we'll continue, and we'll do it by working together and talking through some of these things. So thank you so much for joining us,
guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We'll keep in touch. We'll see you guys soon.
Enjoy your Friday weekend.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Good
Guys.
to see you all again.
Bye.
Yeah, you too.